As I have told you before also, that the neoclassical age consists of three ages, okay, or three segments which are there. Firstly, it is the age of Dryden, okay, and it is also called the Restoration Age. It is from 1660 to 1700. Why this is called the Restoration Age? Because England is seeing the restoration of monarchy. Charles II is coming to throne. Okay. Secondly, it is the age of Pope. It is from 1700s to 1745. It is called the Augustan Age. And thirdly, it is the age of sensibility, or the age of Johnson. Okay, 1745 to 1785. And what we see over here is that the 18th century, which is the seat of the neoclassical age in English literature, it included all these three ages. Why so? It is important to look into this naming of the ages here, because here the king is not gaining the importance. Previously, what we have seen the age is named after the king or the queen. Elizabeth, Jacobean, that is James I, Caroline, or the ruler, Puritan Integrum, the Commonwealth period. Okay, but here, for the first time, what we are seeing that it is focusing on the prominent writer of that time. So who are they? It is Dryden, Pope, and Johnson. Johnson here means Samuel Johnson, Dr. Samuel Johnson. Okay, it is called the neoclassical age in English literature because the writers and the poets, they have this much adhered to and improved upon the classical modes of literary art which was sanctioned by Aristotle. Okay, and as it was practiced by the Greek and Roman writers. Clear? So what we see here is that these writers who were present in these times, and especially these three and many others who were there, they were much more focused on this type of writing of the classical modes. Okay, the literature of this era is made much of the so-called the classical rules, okay, and tenets which seem to them almost as fixed and unalterable as the laws of nature. Okay, so they focused on these rules of the classical literature so much that they did not want to move from that. They continuously adapted, they continuously imbibed those things, those characteristics of the classical ages or the classical modes of literary techniques that were sanctioned by Aristotle and followed by several other ancient Greek and Roman writers. And that is why this age is called the neoclassical age. Okay, we are getting the classical format, we are getting the classical idea in a more reformed, refined way in a new age. Okay, so the neoclassical does not only imply that the writers and the poets, obviously, of the 18th century followed the classical poets and writers. Okay, they also introduced and cultivated certain innovative and inventive qualities in their writings. Okay, so they are not just following the writers of those times, they are not just following Horace, Virgil, Juvenal, or several others, but they are also reinventing to adapt to current situations. Okay, so they are getting inspired from previous writings. They are getting inspired from the writings of the classical age, and what we find here is that while getting inspired, they are also adding something new to this. Okay, and this is making this age called neoclassical. Okay, it is not just classical age but neoclassical. It focuses on keeping in the traditions of the classical age, but at the same time it is adding more and more technique which would be suitable to the new age and to a new location, obviously. Okay, we are writing in England, we are focusing on England, right? So they are adding the classical techniques, they are following the classical techniques, but at the same time what they are doing, they are inventing new techniques, new ways, new inventions are being incorporated besides the old classical ones. Okay, so this is the way the neoclassical age is being developed. Okay, it is not a slavish imitation, obviously. Okay, they are obviously following the techniques, but they are not slavishly imitating, but what they are doing, rather emulation. That is why it is applied to the 18th century literature. Okay, so this emulation is the technique where they are adding things, they are adding those writings which are suitable for the new age, okay, or the new place. For example, if you look into the neoclassical poetry that is prevalent in these three ages, you will see that the neoclassical poetry is marked by the dominance of reason and good sense. As I have told you in previous class also, it has no room for imagination, okay, or enthusiasm or emotion or mysticism. What we find here is that all these characteristics, emotions, imagination, was very dominant characteristics of the Elizabethan poetry, right? But here what we see, here this is focused on what? It focuses on intellect. It is fed by reasoning. Okay, so this is a poetry which deals much more with the brain or the faculties of the brain, which focuses on and the exclusiveness of the town life. Okay, I am saying about poetry only. This neoclassical poetry is exclusively focusing on the town life. Okay, the life lived by the fashionable people, especially in the city of London, and their problems that they face, the problems that they are facing. If you look into the first poem that you have, that is Samuel Johnson's London, it focuses on what? It focuses on the life. It focuses on the life of present day London. Not this present day, but it is describing that time. Okay, so the poets drew their subjects from the drawing rooms of ladies, the coffee houses, and obviously the politics. Okay, which was the discussion of the hour. And what we will see, or what we can see here, is that it was specially hostile to everything that belonged to the Middle Ages, with their chivalrous extravagance, their visionary idealism, okay, and their strong religious faith. So the neoliberalist has unbounded respect for the rules of the poetic composition, but that does not mean that they will follow the Middle Ages poetry or their enthusiasm or their way of looking into things. Okay, so what they did, they followed the classical writers, as I told you before also. Classical writers, that is the Horace, Virgil, even Cicero. Okay, that is the age of Augustus. Okay, Roman Augustus. So for them it was their way of life, and they followed the writers of the Augustan period, and that is why this age is called the Augustan age also. Okay, because it looked into the classical age, the Augustan period. Clear? The Roman emperor. Also, it was sacrilegious to them to alter the rules, with the result that the faith in the promoting and guidance of individual genius was banished from the realm of neoclassical poetry. Okay, the neoclassical poetry is marked by simplicity, lucidity, directness, and obviously polish. But what we see here is that there is always a critique of the society. There is always a picture of the society that they are living in. As I have told you before also, what are the themes? The themes are drawn from the town life. Okay, their daily life is being expressed over here. The politics, the subjects become politics. Subjects are drawn from coffee house discussions. Okay, so the classical poetry is simple, it is lucid, it is direct, but at the same time it is critical, and from there we are getting the satires. Okay, these satires are actually being showcased to be able to critique the society. If you have seen in your previous classes the rape of the lock, okay, it actually commented on the fashionable foibles. Okay, it commented on the 18th century society. Okay, the culture of the 18th century. It criticizes them, it satirizes them. Okay, similarly, it is also dealing with a simple topic, and that is why it is mock epic. Okay, it is mocking the 18th century social class, because the cutting of a hair is raised to certain extent. The cutting of the hair is raised to the level of an epic. Okay, why? Because it was asked to Pope to write this trivial thing. Okay, mock epic hocche ki? In mock epic, what do? In mock epic, the writer uses a trivial thing to describe in large proportions, obviously in the way of satirizing. Right, mock epic does this, and that is what you know. Clear? So this is also a product of this 18th century, where we get to see this age to clear out a picture of the society and satirize it. Okay, the typical stanza form of the neoclassical poetry was the heroic couplet, the two iambic pentameter lines which rhyme together. Clear? The heroic couplet was found to suit the intellectual, satirical and frivolous subject matter of the classical poetry, as I have told you before also in mock epic. So what we find here is that this description is important. This description is important because it gives us an image of the neoclassical age, its writers. Okay, so what we find here is that this neoclassical age, these writers create poetry which will suit the purpose of the present day. Okay, and at the same time it will follow the rules of what? It will follow the rules of the classical period. Okay, so if we look into the Restoration verse satires, okay, the Restoration ages verse satire. Okay, so Restoration ages verse satire will be very much prominent in describing this age, describing the characteristics of this age. Okay, so we will look into that Restoration verse satire. Satire, to say, you have in your syllabus, satire is what? According to Dr. Johnson, satire is a poem in which wickedness or folly is censured. Okay, it is expressed, it is satirically expressed in to show the foibles, to show the follies, to show the wickedness of what? Mostly of the society, of the people who are in power. Clear? So the first triumphs of satire were political, okay, particularly in Samuel Butler's Hudibras. If you look into that, you will see how the political things are going on, and followed by Dryden's Absalom and Achitophel, which was published in 1682, Macflecknoe in 1682, okay, and the Medal, okay, also in 1682. Butler's Hudibras, Samuel Butler's Hudibras is a huge poem, over 10,000 lines, I think. Yes, over 10,000 lines, mock heroic in form. It derives the manifold adventures of the knight Hudibras and his esquire Ralpho, Ralpho. Okay. Similarly, Dryden is a great poet and certainly the greatest juvenile satirist in English. Dryden's first satire is Absalom and Achitophel, and this satire was called forth by the political emergency. Okay. Dryden's intention in Absalom and Achitophel was to secure imprisonment of the Earl of Shaftesbury. Okay, so what we see through these satires, we see that they are focused on what? They are focused on the political gains or political outlooks. Okay, so that what they can do, so that they can continuously focus on anything which is harmful for the society, which is detrimental for the society. Similarly, in the case of Medal, Dryden's second satire, which was also an attack on Shaftesbury, okay, the Earl of Shaftesbury. The theme of Macflecknoe is the choice of Shadwell and Flecknoe as his heir and successor to the kingdom of nonsense and dullness in prose and words. So what we see here is that we see that this kind of description is constantly focusing, constantly showing how this age is focused on the current themes, the themes which are important for the society. The political importance is very important for them. Okay, so this in case of Absalom and Achitophel, we can see it is a satiric poem written by Dryden. The satire was occasioned by the quarrel between the Whigs and the Tories, okay, the two groups of the Parliament, English Parliament. In the poem, Dryden took the names and situation from biblical story of the rebellion of Absalom against his father, King David. In the poem, Earl of Shaftesbury is depicted as Achitophel, okay, Absalom's chief counselor, and the Duke of Monmouth as Absalom, okay, Duke of Buckingham as Zimri, and Charles II as King David. Clear? So what we see? We are seeing this analogy, we are seeing this, all these characters are being put into the biblical mold in order to put in a satirical fold. Why? Because they does not want to directly attack someone, but in a roundabout way they are clearly describing what it actually is. Clear? So the most remarkable thing about this satire is the way in which the biblical characters and the situations have been given contemporary significance. Okay, Dryden rendered the theme in the form of an allegory. Dryden gives to the satire this epic dimension, so that what we get there is a touch of an Milton Satan in Achitophel. You remember Milton from Paradise Lost, right? So there is this touch of Milton's Satan in Achutable, who is revolting against God, and what we find here is that Dryden's main achievement in the satire lay in his individual character sketches. Okay, his Achitophel and Zimri are drawn with felicity and finish. Okay, so what is important over here? It is important to say, or it is important to look into, that these characters are focusing on the life that they are leading, but at the same time they are critiquing that. Obviously they are leading the life and they are understanding the hollowness, the wickedness, the follies that are present, and they are critiquing that in a satirical manner, and that is restoration for satire. Clear?